Thank you very much for having me here. Very good afternoon. I know I have a bit of a tall order to try and keep you all awake after lunch, but I'll try and do my best. So today I'm here to try and talk about what we mean by life work technology and how that is helping organizations to manage their employees better. But before I get into that, maybe I'll take a minute or 30 seconds here to introduce us a little bit. Some of you probably know who UKG is. I'm sure you find the name a little interesting. Some of you are wondering, ye UKG kaun hai? Is this some kind of a startup, someone that we've not heard of earlier? So let me introduce us quickly. UKG, I'm assuming many of you have heard a company called Kronos in the past. So UKG is nothing but Kronos in a new avatar, let's put it that way. We merged with a company called Ultimate about 2 years back, and we wanted to retain the brand presence of both Ultimate and Kronos, and we created UKG, which expands into Ultimate Kronos Group and not upper kindergarten. So that's who we are. So I'll talk a little more about what we are doing and how we are helping organizations. So I'm sure you're wondering what life work technology is all about. And I'd like to go back to maybe a couple of panelists earlier today, and that's been a recurring theme of discussion around things like work-life balance and work-life integration and stuff like that, right? So many years back, long before the pandemic, in fact, Jeff Bezos had once mentioned that I don't agree that there is something called work-life balance. It's hanging in the balance kind of stuff, right? He had used the term work-life harmony. And today I heard a term called work-life integration from one of the panelists. That the point is, after the pandemic, when the pandemic struck, all of us used to talk about this greatest experiment that the world is running, which was en masse, hundreds and millions of people going back to home, and there is a work from home experiment happening, right? That was an experiment. I think we tasted success. We did well, but we are coming out of it. And today we are running a far more complex experiment than that. That experiment was everyone sitting at home and doing the job. Today we are experimenting with different sets of employees coming to office, hybrid work, working from home, the complexity, and each organization and its HR is constantly struggling with how to manage employees' life and employees' work when it has all come together, right? And that really brings to the forefront not just managing employees at work, but managing their life and work. So what kind of technology can be provided to an organization to really help manage employees' life and work? And that is what we call as life work technology, right? So how can life work technology help organizations better manage their employees is something that I'll try and talk about. The key theme, underlying theme to all of this is greater flexibility. Whether we like it or not, every single organization and almost every single employee wants more flexibility from the past. Even for those set of employees who actually work in very structured environments, let's say a retail floor, maybe a manufacturing shop floor, there is expectation of greater flexibility being provided to them as well, right? Now, how do you manage that? How do you balance that part of the life of an employee, yet get the best productivity out of that employee as far as work is concerned? So these are some challenges that HR is facing. Some of them will be permanent. Some of them will be in the realm of policy making for decades to come. And the better support you can have through tech, the more relevant it becomes for you. So that's what I'm trying to go and talk about a little more as I go along. So UKG's vision is actually to try and develop, we are a technology company, as you all know, probably most of you know, is to try and develop tools and solutions for organizations that help you go in this journey. And the reason why we think we are best placed to do this, and again this might come as a news to some of you, is the reason why we think we are best placed to do this is UKG is also the parent company to Great Places to Work. UKG acquired Great Places to Work a year back. So what does that mean? What it means is it gives us the ability to understand through the great research that GPTW has done over the years to understand the moments that matter for employees. That's something that GPTW has done extremely well. And how do we digitize that into tools so that we can provide those tools to organizations for them to respond better and faster? I think the key, and this is also another discussion that I was hearing through the day, is is the key in the current age in the new way of working. It's all about being more adaptable and how fast you adapt, right? So gone are the days when you try and judge an employee's mood maybe once in 6 months or once in a year. You really need something which is more real time in nature. What are the moments that matter and how those moments can translate into action. I think the best analogy that I'd like to give there is something that all of us do, a dashboard of a car, right? When you look at the dashboard of a car, a couple of things come out. One, the guy who's driving it, the dashboard is presented to the guy who's actually driving the car. The dashboard is not presented to the guy who's maybe sitting behind and asking the driver to drive the car, right? Number one. Number two, the dashboard is presented to the driver in real time. Do you think even a 5-second delayed information would help him? Or even a 2-minute delayed information would help him? Absolutely not, right? So, and where are these dashboards going? I'm sure if some of you have driven a Tesla or some of the more modern high-end cars, you will see these dashboards are moving to the next level where it even predicts that someone on the road is going to take a cut. Some person is going to come in. So it predicts and even goes ahead and directs you that you can go ahead and stop, or it might even put the brakes on its own. So these are dashboards that are working in real time to help a person who's taken that job up, in this case driving, to really take the right actions at the right moment and adapt to the conditions that are presented to him on the road, right? That's exactly what we need to do in our organization scenario. Now, we probably don't want to react in milliseconds and nanoseconds, I get that, but the analogy applies, right? If this kind of dashboard is available to the top man in the organization, but to the managers on the ground, if you don't provide this information, how are they able to react to day-to-day changes in business environments? At the top, you still are looking at information over a period of time. But on the ground, you always need to give information where you can react very quickly to make changes, adapt, and at the same time take care of employee preferences, right? That's exactly where life work technology comes in. So if I look at some of the components of life work technology, I'll not talk about all of them, but maybe 2 or 3 here. So if you look at some of the components of life work technology, you can break this broadly into 2 parts. The right side of the circle is the life side, and I'll explain that, and the left side of the circle is the work side. So let's take, for example, pattern recognition and bias interruption. We all know intuitively that when a person is at risk of leaving the company, you will start seeing some amount of tardiness in that person's availability, coming late to office, etc., etc. But how easy it is for you to have the tools in place for you to detect that in advance. In most cases, it's probably too late for you to know that something like that has happened, and then corrective actions rarely work. So can you have tools that can actually recognize these patterns in real time and then highlight it to the right people, saying, these are some patterns that might be, and I'm just taking a very simplistic example around tardiness. There can be just so many patterns that today's tools can try and read. So pattern recognition. Bias interruption. An example, let's say retail floor or a manufacturing shop floor. I don't know how many of you have heard this simple term called sweetheart scheduling. Very common, where schedules, managers tend to schedule their employees on the basis of whom they like more kind of stuff, right? And it could happen to other things over time. Fairness and equity around some of these things. So how can you detect some of these biases? Because this leads to fairness and equity issues, this leads to disengagement by employees, this potentially leads to employees believing that my organization does not take care of me. So how can you drive this? And this cannot be driven in once a year employee engagement surveys. This has to be done on a more real-time basis to throw this out, right? Or intelligent tools for listening and belonging. Can you listen to employees' preferences, work preferences, break preferences? Can you listen to them more objectively on a day-to-day basis and not on a long-term basis, saying at the end of 6 months when you run a survey, you say, my working conditions are not great and you need to do something. Not that. Can you listen to them on a more regular basis? Now, when you really have to listen to employees on a more regular basis and larger the organization, the lesser you can do it manually. Lesser your manager can do it manually. You really need the tools to be able to listen, to be able to take care of your employees' fairness, equity, belonging, what have you, right? So those are some examples of where an employee's preferences, employees' work preferences, patterns, etc. can be taken care of. But at the same time, you need to be adaptive as an organization to deliver the right productivity and the right work output to an organization. Again, I'll take an example where being dynamic is extremely important. A retail floor, for example. When you're on a retail shop floor or retail floor, uh, if you suddenly realize that there is going to be a big change in the way the customers are going to walk in the next day or in the evening or tomorrow, can you make a quick change in your schedules to identify who the best suited people are so that I can serve my customers the best? And that can happen on retail, that can happen in any other environment, in a hospital, in a BPO, and so on and so forth. So how can you have the tools that can actually let you take care of your employees' preferences, but at the same time try and help you more adaptive mechanisms to drive your business outcomes better, which is where instead of processes being static, can you have more adaptive processes? Can they be responsive so much more? Can you have more multifaceted optimization of your people so that you are able to take care of not just the business outcomes, but also able to take care of a whole lot of employee variables. So these are some examples of life work technology that we are trying to weave more and more into the solutions, because the idea here is eventually we all have learned this. That it was already there. We all have learned this so much more during the pandemic that without digitization, we really cannot move forward very well. But when you have to go to digitization, you need the tools that can help you take care of your employees, of course. So the key to this is adaptation, and I'll quickly run through a couple of slides here, which is something that you may be well aware. One of the researchers from McKinsey, a survey from McKinsey actually came out which said that organizations that did well during COVID adapted much faster, which is pretty obvious. The interesting point was they said they adapted, the expected adaptation rate versus their adaptation was 20 to 25 times faster. So the companies adapted so much faster than expected, and those were the companies that did well, right? In fact, there is data to suggest that they did well even from a performance standpoint, 3.23x greater return. So being able to adapt is a given. Now, can you have the tools, necessary tools available with you so that it can help you adapt better is something that we are trying to work with our organizations globally, with our customers globally, sorry. So I just wanted to get into maybe 2 or 3 examples of what are we trying to do maybe on the ground level when it comes to trying to provide the tools to organizations which are more transformational, if you will, in the life work technology space. So we are looking at 3 broad areas, from being transactional, where all of us have gone through solutions where we automate processes to meet the business needs, right? So from being transactional to how are we making it more transformational, and I'll talk about that in a minute. From being reactive to being more proactive, and that I think is a very, very important parameter to look at for an HR leader. How can I be more proactive in terms of detecting variances and so on and so forth? From being steady, static, etc., to being a little more adaptive to situations in a more real-time basis. So, for example, when we talk of transactional to transformational, let's look at a couple of scenarios. For example, prioritizing equity, belonging, and inclusiveness in the workplace. Now, how do you prioritize that? We all talk of DE&I, right? But at the ground level, how do you show employees that you do that? And you do that through demonstrating flexibility, empathy, and meet him where that person is in his life. Different people are in different stages of their life, personal life, but they're all working for you. So how do you figure out which person is in which stage of life, and how do you give them that flexibility that is required? Or give the confidence in their future, right? Look out for their family in times of need. If I would just expand on this at a very, very transactional level, for example, can I consider employee work preferences when scheduling employees? I mean, and it need not be just a manufacturing or a retail floor. For example, if a female employee is working from home, and I've heard this from a lot of females, that for females, and I don't know how many females in this room agree, but I've heard this from a lot of women, that working from home was far more difficult than working from office, purely because they had to juggle multiple responsibilities at the same time. I mean, there was maybe food, and there was a kid, and so on and so forth. Now, can you give that ability to those people, not just women, but everyone, to be able to plan their work preferences in such a way that they can give their work, but at the same time manage their life? This all comes down to flexibility and the hybridization of workforce that has happened in the last couple of years. Examples include swapping of shifts and so on. And the key to that is providing visibility to managers. So this dashboard that you're seeing there, compare that to maybe the car dashboard that I showed you. If you have a dashboard here which gives them information as and when they need it, it does not need to be in a nanosecond every second. but as and when they need it, then you can take so much better decisions and try and be more transformational with your employees. Being reactive to proactive, and there are just way too many use cases around being reactive to proactive, for example. To begin with, it's simple things like compliances. For example, people approaching overtime in companies where overtime exists. How can tools be more proactively telling the leaders, saying that this person is approaching overtime limits and you probably need to take care and you don't breach any of those rules. But then little more complicated use cases come into play. For example, fatigue. There are many industries where fatigue can play a very important role. If a person is put in 10 shifts continuously, 10 night shifts continuously, how do you detect potential cases of fatigue and highlight that to the respective stakeholders, saying this person is potentially reaching some kind of a fatigue scenario, and you might have to take care of that particular non-compliance. And there can be just so many more proactive notifications that you can provide to organizations, so that it's not just about compliance. I think the bigger aspect here is being more just to your employees, where employees start feeling that I'm being taken care of. There isn't an unnecessary extra that is going to someone else who does not deserve it, and what have you, right? So the whole concept of fairness, equity, being just actually comes from being a little more proactive through the information that that can be made available. And I talked about this already, so won't spend too much time, but being steady to adaptive. I think this works in business environments where any change in the way you're dealing with your customers has a direct impact on how your people are staffed, right? A retail environment or a hospital or a BPO or a manufacturing. In any of these environments, you need to be always ready for moving from little more static-ish environment to a little more adaptive environment, where you can staff people on the basis of how the business is changing, evolving, and this changes day-to-day basis. We are not talking of workforce planning in a 6-month basis or a quarterly basis. That we will do. But on a day-to-day basis, how do you staff the right person for the right skill at the right time, at the right place, with the right preference and the right availability? These are all mathematical variables that need to come together in an algorithm for you to be able to say, okay, Sumeet Kumar, my colleague here, is the right person for this shift, for example, right? So those are things that you will increasingly need to do, if not in all industries, in some of the industries, to try and arrive, not only deliver better, higher productivity, of course, but also this takes care of employee preferences, availability, and the variables around employee preferences. So that is where I talked about life and work, right? It kind of brings together the life-work technology. So if I were to bring this all together, as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, what we are trying to do is trying to work with organizations to see how they can move from transactional to more transformational way of managing their employees, reactive to proactive, and steady to being more adaptive. And I think that the last one is probably the most important, right? The more adaptive you are, the better you perform. So these were some of the thoughts I had around what we do with life work technology. We are helping organizations build a culture of belonging, because when employees feel that they are well treated, more fair, more just, you will see a better culture of belonging. Not that as a software company we can go ahead and change the whole culture, but it just reinforces, it just helps significantly more when there is more transparency. The key, as we all would agree, the key to any level of trust between an employee and the employer is more transparency, and that a solution like this can do. Agility. We talked of adaptability. It's not just being adaptive for the at a speed that doesn't work. It's being adaptive at a certain at a very fast pace, and that is where fostering organizational agility and resilience, and guide people and offer autonomy. Give people the ability to choose their own working times, if you will. Give people the flexibility to do their own stuff, but at the same time maintain it within a certain guidelines and a framework. So these are some of the things that we're trying to do, because I think the world is evolving in that direction. There is no two ways that the hybrid work is here to stay. The complexity of managing different policies for different groups of employees for HR is going to stay. So how can we help you manage your people better in a much smaller time frame? I was speaking to someone at my booth here where we were talking about the time frame of change. Earlier used to be years and decades, and today in the blink of an eye things can change. And you might miss a trick here and there. So how can you be more proactive around this? is where we are trying to help our customers that we work with. So those were some of the thoughts I had. Thank you so much for patient listening, that too after lunch. Maybe I put you all to sleep, or maybe you all heard me, whatever the case. Thank you. And most welcome. Happy to host you at our booth, or the beer for that matter. But I know my time's up, but if there are questions, I'm happy to take. Otherwise, we can always talk on the outside. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.